My shift at the bookstore ended at 10:30, which meant I had exactly 30 minutes to catch the last convenient bus home. I made it with 3 minutes to spare, collapsing into a seat near the back while Chicago's October cold seeped through my green jacket. The city blurred past the windows, streetlights creating halos in the moisture-thick air. Somewhere between the loop and my neighborhood, my phone died. Just blinked out mid-scroll through a text from Megan asking if I wanted Thai or pizza for dinner. I'd forgotten to charge it after my morning classes, and now the screen was as black as the sky overhead. Annoying, but not catastrophic. I'd lived 19 years before smartphones dominated everything. I could survive 40 minutes without one. By the time I stepped off the bus 3 blocks from my apartment, the drizzle had transformed into legitimate rainfall. Not a downpour, but persistent enough to soak through my hair and make my jeans stick to my thighs. I walked faster, shoulders hunched, wishing I'd grabbed an umbrella this morning when the forecast had promised clear skies. Liar forecasts. Typical. My building came into view, a 3-story walk-up that had seen better decades. The rent was cheap enough for a 19-year-old college student working part-time, and Mrs. Park on the 2nd floor always saved me leftovers from her restaurant. Home, or close enough to it after my grandmother died last year. That's when I noticed the vehicles. 3 black SUVs parked along the curb, engines running, exhaust creating small clouds in the cold air. Not unusual for Chicago, except these weren't delivery trucks or ride shares. They were identical, gleaming even under the weak streetlights, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. Instinct prickled at the base of my spine. I slowed my pace, suddenly conscious of how empty the street was at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. The logical part of my brain said I was being paranoid. The part that had grown up without parents, that had learned to trust gut feelings, said something was wrong. I should have turned around. Should have walked to the 24-hour diner 2 blocks over and waited until morning. Should have done anything except what I did, which was push through the building's front door and climb the stairs to the 3rd floor. The stairwell smelled like old curry and bleach, familiar scents that usually meant comfort. Tonight they felt wrong, too strong, too ordinary for whatever was making my heart hammer against my ribs. I reached the 3rd floor landing and froze. 12 men in black suits filled the hallway, not clustered together, but positioned with military precision. 2 flanking the stairwell door. 4 spread along the corridor at even intervals. 6 more surrounding my apartment door. 2 on each side and 2 directly in front. They weren't moving, just standing there, hands clasped in front of them, eyes tracking my arrival with unnerving focus. The suits looked expensive, tailored to accommodate broad shoulders and athletic builds, professional, dangerous. Every survival instinct I possessed screamed at me to run. I took 1 step backward, then another. My wet sneaker squeaked against the linoleum. The sound echoed in the suddenly silent hallway. "Miss Mitchell," the voice came from my right. An older man, maybe late 30s, with gray threading through dark hair at his temples. He moved toward me with deliberate slowness, hands visible and empty. "My name is Franco. I need you to stay calm. I need you to get away from me." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I'm calling the police." "Your phone is dead." He said it gently, like he was talking to a spooked animal. "We know. That's why we're here." Ice flooded my veins. "How do you know my phone is dead?" He ignored the question. "You're in danger. Serious, immediate danger. We need to get you inside your apartment right now." "I'm not going anywhere with you people." I backed toward the stairs again. "I don't know who you are or what you want, but look outside." Franco gestured toward the window at the end of the hallway. 3rd vehicle from the corner, gray sedan. 2 men inside. "They've been watching your building for 40 minutes, waiting for you to come home alone." I didn't want to look. Didn't want to give him the satisfaction. But my eyes betrayed me, flicking toward the window, toward the street below. Through the rain-streaked glass, I could just make out a sedan that hadn't been there when I arrived. Dark shapes inside, barely visible but definitely present. "Who are you?" The question came out as a whisper. "Someone your father trusted." Franco pulled something from his jacket pocket. I tensed, but it was just a key. My key, the spare I'd given to Mrs. Park for emergencies. We need to move. Now. Those men are waiting for us to leave you vulnerable. We're not going to let that happen. My father died when I was 3 years old. I know. Something like sadness crossed his face. Thomas Mitchell. He was a good man. One of the best. The sound of my father's name, spoken with such familiarity by a complete stranger, shattered the last of my composure. I don't understand what's happening. I know you don't. But someone inside can explain better than I can. Franco extended his hand toward me. Not touching, just offering. Please, Hannah. We're running out of time. I don't know why I trusted him. Maybe it was the way he said my father's name. Maybe it was the fear that had been building in my chest since I saw those SUVs. Maybe it was just exhaustion and confusion, and the desperate hope that someone, anyone, could make sense of the chaos. I let him guide me to my apartment door. The men in suits parted like water, creating a path. None of them spoke. None of them even looked at me directly, eyes fixed on points past my shoulders as if scanning for threats. Up close, I could see the bulges beneath their jackets. Weapons. These men were armed, standing in my hallway, guarding my door. Franco used my spare key. The lock clicked open with a sound that felt far too loud. He pushed the door inward, gestured for me to enter first. If I walk in there and something happens to me, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. Those cameras in the stairwell will have footage. The police will know. The cameras have been off for the last 2 hours, Franco said. Not threatening, just factual. And if we wanted to hurt you, Hannah, we've had 16 years to do it. 16 years, since I was 3, since my father died. I walked through the door. My apartment looked exactly as I'd left it this morning. Megan's textbooks scattered across the coffee table, my laptop charging by the window. The kitchen sink still had breakfast dishes I'd promised myself I'd wash tonight. Everything normal, everything familiar, except for the man standing by my bookshelf. He was tall, maybe 6'3", with the same athletic build as the men outside. But where they had faded into a collective threat, he commanded immediate attention. Dark hair, styled back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Strong jaw, high cheekbones, olive skin that suggested Mediterranean ancestry. He wore a black suit similar to the others, but his was tailored differently, cut to emphasize rather than conceal his physique. The white shirt beneath was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a gold chain that caught the overhead light. But it was his eyes that held me, dark brown, almost black in the apartment's shadows, watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Hannah Mitchell. He said my name like he'd been practicing it. I'm Lucas Bellini. We need to talk. About what? I managed to keep my voice level despite the hammering of my heart. About why there are armed men in my hallway? About how you broke into my apartment? About why you're about to be kidnapped? He said it simply, like discussing the weather, and what we're going to do to prevent that. I had 10 minutes to pack. Lucas made that clear while Franco supervised from the doorway, watching me throw clothes into a duffel bag with shaking hands. Jeans, sweaters, underwear, toothbrush, the practical things. My laptop stayed behind. So did my phone charger, because what was the point when my phone was already dead? What about Megan? I asked, zipping the bag closed. My roommate was supposed to be home by midnight. Walking into an empty apartment with no explanation would terrify her. Already handled. Lucas checked his watch, a sleek piece that probably cost more than my tuition. She's safe. We moved her 2 hours ago. Moved her where? Somewhere secure. She thinks it's police protection after a credible threat. She doesn't know about us. He met my eyes across my tiny bedroom. And she won't. Not unless absolutely necessary. The convoy was waiting outside. 4 identical SUVs, engines rumbling, exhaust creating clouds in the cold October air. Franco opened the door of the second vehicle, gestured for me to climb inside. The interior smelled like leather and something else. Gun oil, maybe. Or just expensive cologne mixed with danger. Lucas slid in beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him despite the space between us. The driver pulled away from the curb without a word, and within seconds we were moving through Chicago's empty streets, at a speed that would have gotten anyone else pulled over. Where are we going? I asked, watching my neighborhood disappear through the tinted windows. Somewhere you'll be safe while we handle the immediate threat. Lucas's voice was calm, controlled. Like he did this every day. Maybe he did. 3 hours north. Far enough that they won't find you easily. 3 hours north put us over the Wisconsin border. North of Milwaukee, skirting Highway 45 toward the forest near Eagle River. Middle of nowhere. Perfect for hiding someone. Or disposing of them. The thought made my stomach clench. Franco sat in the passenger seat, speaking quietly into a phone. I caught fragments. Perimeter secure. Teams in position. No sign of pursuit. Military language for a situation I still didn't fully understand. Tell me about my father. The words came out steadier than I felt. You said you knew him, that he trusted you. I didn't know him personally. Lucas turned to face me, and in the dim interior lighting, I could see the scar on his chin more clearly. Not a neat surgical line, but jagged, old. I was 12 years old when he died. Just a kid being protected by my family's organization. The math clicked into place. Lucas was 28 now. 16 years ago, he'd been 12. A child. Then how? Your father, Thomas Mitchell, was a forensic accountant for my family. The Bellini organization. He said it without shame, just fact. He was brilliant, meticulous. One of my grandfather's most trusted advisors. When an ambush happened 16 years ago, Thomas died protecting several members of our family, including me. I tried to picture it. My father, who I barely remembered, dying to save a 12-year-old boy who would grow into the man sitting beside me. What happened? A rival family decided to make a move. They targeted a vehicle convoy, similar to this one. Franco spoke from the front seat without turning around. Your father was there as financial advisor, not muscle. He shouldn't have even been in danger. But when the shooting started, he put himself between the bullets and the people he'd sworn to protect. My hands twisted in my lap. He was a criminal. He was a man with complicated loyalties. Lucas's voice held something like respect. And before he died, he made my grandfather promise something. Protect his daughter. Keep her safe. Never let her know about this world. Your grandfather, Salvatore Bellini, Don of the family. Lucas pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos. He took Thomas's dying request seriously. Made it a blood oath. For 6 years, until my grandfather passed, he kept that promise. Had people watching you, making sure you were safe with your grandmother. He showed me the phone. An old man with fierce eyes and silver hair, wearing a suit that looked uncomfortable. When he died, I was 18. Too young to be Don, everyone said. Too inexperienced. But the family needed leadership, so I stepped up. He swiped to another photo. Himself at 18, looking impossibly young despite the hard edge already visible in his expression. One of my first acts was to honor every promise my grandfather made, including the one to Thomas Mitchell. You've been watching me for 10 years. 16 years total. 10 of those years were my direct responsibility. He didn't apologize. Didn't look away. We kept our distance. Made sure you never noticed. Intervened only when necessary. The SUV hit the highway. Speed increasing. Trees blurred past the windows. Darkness punctuated by occasional streetlights. My mind raced through my entire life, trying to spot the surveillance I'd never noticed. How many times had I been in danger without knowing? How many close calls had been averted by invisible hands? The 'Ndrangheta. Franco spoke the word like a curse. That's the organization that wants you now. They discovered your connection to us about 3 weeks ago. Been planning this kidnapping ever since. Why now? Why not when I was a kid? Why wait 16 years? Lucas and Franco exchanged a look. Some silent communication passed between them. Finally, Lucas spoke. Your 20th birthday is in 2 months. When that happens, your father's will is unsealed. My father's will? Thomas was careful. Smart. He knew what he was involved in carried risks. Lucas pulled up more files on his phone. Legal documents, bank statements, property deeds. He set up a trust that activates when you turn 20. $3.2 million. A property in Italy. Shares in several legitimate businesses. Your inheritance. The number hit me like physical impact. $3 million? Your father spent 16 years accumulating wealth through legitimate means. Forensic accounting pays well, especially when you're as good as he was. Franco glanced back at me. He wanted you to have resources, safety, the ability to choose your own life, and the 'Ndrangheta wants to control that money through me. The pieces fell into place. They grabbed me, forced me to sign over the accounts. Then what? Kill me? Most likely. Lucas said it without inflection. Or keep you alive as leverage against us. Either way, you'd be a tool, a thing to be used. The SUV exited the highway, turning onto smaller roads. We'd been driving for over 2 hours, though I'd lost track of time somewhere between revelation and shock. My life, my father, everything I'd thought I knew had been rewritten in the span of a few hours. I need to talk to Megan. The request came out firmer than I felt. Right now. I need to know she's actually safe and not another lie. Lucas considered for a moment, then nodded. Franco, arrange a video call. Supervised, but let her see her friend is okay. 20 minutes later, we pulled through gates that appeared out of nowhere. High walls, security cameras every 50 feet, guards in dark clothing patrolling the perimeter. The property beyond was massive, a modern mansion built into the hillside, all glass and stone in defensive positioning. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress. They set me up in a room that would have been nice under different circumstances. King bed, private bathroom, windows overlooking dark forest. Franco handed me a phone, already dialing. Megan's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, scared, but unharmed. Hannah! Oh my God, where are you? The police came and said there was a threat, and... I'm okay. I cut her off before she could spiral. I'm safe. Are you? Yeah. I'm in some hotel with like 6 cops outside my door. They won't tell me anything except that someone was planning to hurt us. Her eyes searched the screen. What's happening? Do you know more than me? No. The lie tasted bitter. Just stay where you are. Do what they tell you. This will be over soon. We talked for 5 more minutes before Franco ended the call. I handed back the phone, feeling hollow. Another lie added to the pile. Another person I cared about kept in the dark for their own protection. Lucas appeared in the doorway. You should rest. Tomorrow we'll start making plans. Plans for what? For ending this. For making sure the 'Ndrangheta never threatens you again. He turned to leave, then paused. Your father was a good man, Hannah. Everything he did for you. I've spent 10 years honoring that. I'm not about to stop now. He left me alone in that expensive prison, surrounded by luxury and danger in equal measure. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands shaking, mind reeling from information overload. My father wasn't who I thought. My life wasn't what I believed. And somewhere out there, men wanted to kidnap me for money I didn't even know existed. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat by the window, watching armed guards patrol the grounds, wondering how my ordinary life had become this nightmare. The first 3 days blurred together in a haze of information I couldn't fully process. Franco became my reluctant tour guide through my father's secret life, bringing boxes of documents to the dining room, where I spread them across expensive mahogany-like crime scene evidence. Letters. Dozens of them, written in my father's careful handwriting. Addressed to me but never sent. Dated from the year he died until the year I turned 10. I read them chronologically, watching him age on paper, watching him document my childhood from a distance he could never cross. You lost your first tooth today. One read. Your grandmother called to tell me. She doesn't know I still check in, that I have someone watching to make sure you're safe and happy. You put the tooth under your pillow. I wish I could be the one to leave money, to see your face in the morning. My hands shook holding that page. I was 6 when I lost that tooth, could barely remember the moment. But my father, dead for 3 years by then, had known about it within hours. Why didn't he send these? I asked Franco, who sat across the table reviewing his own paperwork. Because they would have revealed everything. The surveillance, the protection, his continued presence in your life even after death. He glanced up, gray eyes sympathetic. Thomas wanted you to have a normal childhood more than he wanted you to know he loved you. That hurt worse than anything else. The sacrifice of being forgotten so I could be safe. The photographs came next. My father had kept hundreds, documenting my life in stolen moments. Me at 7, walking to school, unaware of the camera across the street. Me at 12, laughing with friends at a park, captured from behind a tree. Me at 16, arguing with my grandmother outside our house, both of us crying about something I couldn't even remember now. He loved you. Franco said it simply, like stating a fact. Never doubt that. Every decision he made, including the ones that got him killed, was about protecting you. My mother. The words came out harder than I intended. The documents say she left 6 months after he died. Just abandoned me with my grandmother and never came back. Franco's expression darkened. Your mother, Sarah, couldn't handle what your father did. She knew he worked for my family, knew it was dangerous. But when he actually died, she broke. Blamed the Bellinis, blamed the life, blamed everyone except the people who actually killed him. Did she ever try to contact me after she left? No. He didn't soften it, didn't try to make it easier. She walked away completely. Changed her name, moved to California, remarried. Your grandmother tried to reach out twice. Sarah never responded. I set down the photo I'd been holding. Me at 3 years old, sitting on a tire swing, my father pushing me from behind. One of the last photos of us together. So both my parents abandoned me. One through death, one through choice. Your father didn't abandon you. Lucas appeared in the doorway, and I hadn't even heard him approach. He died protecting people. There's a difference. Is there? Anger flared hot in my chest. Either way, I grew up without him. Either way, I was alone. You were never alone. Lucas crossed the room, picked up one of the surveillance logs. Every day of your life someone was watching, making sure you were safe, intervening when necessary. That should have been comforting. Instead, it felt suffocating. The training started on day 4. Lucas insisted. Franco backed him up, and I was too exhausted from emotional overload to argue effectively. They took me to a basement gym I hadn't known existed, all padded mats and weight equipment that looked military grade. Self-defense isn't about winning fights, Lucas explained, rolling up his sleeves. It's about creating opportunities to escape. Distance, then run. That's the only goal. For 2 hours, he showed me how to break holds, where to strike to disable an attacker, how to use momentum against greater strength. His hands on my wrists were firm but never painful, guiding me through movements until muscle memory started to take over. Again, he'd say when I got it wrong. Faster, when I hesitated. Good, when I finally executed a technique correctly. By the end, I was sweating through my gray sweatshirt, muscles trembling from exertion. Lucas looked barely winded, which was infuriating and somehow attractive at the same time. Tomorrow we'll work on situational awareness, he said, tossing me a towel. How to spot surveillance, recognize threats before they become active. You mean the things I should have been taught 16 years ago so I could have protected myself? He met my eyes without flinching. Your father wanted you to have a normal life. Security training isn't normal for 19-year-old college students. Neither is being kidnapped by the Mafia for protection from other criminals. No, Lucas agreed. It's not. The days fell into a pattern. Morning training, afternoon document review, evening meals where Lucas would tell me stories about my father that Franco remembered. Small things. How Thomas took his coffee black with 1 sugar. How he'd hum while working through complex financial problems. How he'd kept a photo of me in his wallet, even though carrying it was a security risk. Through it all, I felt the pull. Lucas and I orbiting each other like binary stars, drawn together by circumstances neither of us had chosen. He'd catch me watching him across the dinner table. I'd notice how his eyes followed me when I moved through a room. Neither of us acknowledged it. Both of us felt it. Day 6, I found the surveillance room. I'd been exploring the house, restless and unable to sleep. The door was unlocked, which should have been my first warning. Inside, 6 monitors displayed archived footage. File cabinets held backup drives, and a computer terminal showed access to databases I didn't want to think about. My life, cataloged and preserved. Years of watching, recorded, and filed for posterity. I clicked through folders. Age 7 through 10. Age 11 through 14. Age 15 through 18. Each year subdivided by month, by location. by significance of events captured. There. Age 17. Folder marked significant events. I opened it. Footage of me crying in my car after my grandmother's funeral, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe, thinking I was alone, but I wasn't. Someone had been filming from across the parking lot, capturing my grief for their records. More files. Me arguing with Megan about something trivial. Me studying late in the library. Me on a terrible first date with a boy from my linguistics class. Me. All observed. All documented. All violated. I heard footsteps behind me and turned. Lucas stood in the doorway, watching me watch footage of my own life. Get out. My voice shook with rage. Hannah. I said get out. I was screaming now, standing, hands clenched into fists. You watched me, all of you, every private moment, every time I thought I was alone. You were there. We were protecting you. You were invading me. I swept my arm across the desk, sending files and drives crashing to the floor. This isn't protection. This is control. This is ownership. Lucas moved into the room, and I backed away until I hit the wall. He stopped several feet away, giving me space but not retreating. You're right, he said quietly. We crossed lines. Ethical lines that shouldn't have been crossed. We justified it by saying it kept you safe. But that doesn't change what it was. Surveillance. Invasion. Violation of your privacy. Then apologize. I can't. He met my eyes without wavering, because I'd do it again. Every camera, every log, every intervention. I'd do all of it again if it meant keeping you alive. That's not love. That's not protection. I struggled for the word. That's possession. Maybe. He took one step closer. But you're alive. You made it to 19 without being used as leverage, without being hurt, without even knowing you were in danger. That was the goal. That's what your father wanted. What I want matters too. I know. Something cracked in his controlled expression. I know it does. And I'm sorry that knowing about the surveillance hurts you. I'm sorry that we took your privacy. I'm sorry that the cost of keeping you safe was making you feel violated. But you're not sorry you did it. No, I'm not. I wanted to scream at him. Wanted to hit him. To break something. To express the fury burning through my chest. Instead, I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. Knees pulled to my chest. I don't know if I can forgive this. Lucas sat down too, staying on the other side of the room. Not crowding me. Just present. You don't have to. But I need you to understand something. I was 12 when your father died. Just a kid. When I took over at 18, that promise became mine. Protecting you became the one thing I could control when everything else was chaos. Maybe I took it too far. Maybe I crossed lines I shouldn't have. But every decision was made with your safety as the priority. We sat in silence for a long time. Outside, I could hear rain starting again. Always raining in this place. Like the weather matched the weight pressing down on everything. I need time, I finally said, to process this. All of it. Take what you need. Lucas stood, moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the frame. But Hannah, we're running out of time before the Ndrangheta makes their next move. Whatever you decide about me, about this organization, about your father's legacy, decide fast. Because when they come, and they will come, you'll need to be ready. He left me alone in that room full of my stolen life, surrounded by evidence of 16 years of watching. I didn't know if I could forgive it, didn't know if I wanted to, but he was right about one thing. Ready or not, the threat was coming. And I had to decide whether I'd face it with the people who'd violated my privacy or alone against forces I didn't understand. Neither option felt like winning. The anger from discovering the surveillance room hadn't faded. It sat in my chest like a stone, heavy and immovable, making every interaction with Lucas tense. I avoided him when I could, spoke in clipped sentences when I couldn't. He gave me space, which somehow made it worse. I wanted him to push back, to argue, to give me a reason to explode again. Instead, he just watched me with those dark brown eyes, patient and infuriating. Franco found me in the library on day 7, reading one of my father's letters for the 3rd time. He didn't knock, just walked in and closed the door behind him with deliberate care. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "The Ndrangheta found Megan." Ice flooded my veins. "What do you mean, found her?" "They tracked her to the hotel. We have 12 hours, maybe less, before they make a move." He crossed the room, set his phone on the table showing surveillance footage. A hotel hallway. Armed men in the stairwell. Professional. Prepared. "They're going to use her as leverage to draw you out." The stone in my chest transformed into something sharper. Fear. "Get her out. Now. We're planning an extraction." Lucas is coordinating teams as we speak. Franco watched me carefully. "But Hannah, this is different from before. They're expecting us. They want us to come for her. I don't care what they want." I stood, hands clenched. "She's my best friend. She's in danger because of me. We're getting her out." "Agreed. But it's going to be risky." I thought about the surveillance room, about my anger at Lucas, at this entire organization, about how violated I'd felt discovering they'd watched my life for 16 years. None of that mattered if Megan died because I'd been too stubborn to accept help. "I'm going with you." The words came out firm. No room for negotiation. Franco's expression didn't change. "That's not your decision to make." "Yes, it is. She's my friend. My responsibility. She's our responsibility now." He softened slightly. "Lucas won't allow it. You know that. Then he can tell me himself." Lucas was in the war room when I found him, surrounded by maps and monitors showing the hotel layout. 3 other men I didn't recognize stood around the table, all wearing the same dark tactical gear. They fell silent when I entered. "Everyone out," Lucas said without looking up. The men filed out immediately. No questions asked. When the door closed, he finally met my eyes. "Franco told you. I'm coming with you to get Megan." "No." "Yes." I moved closer to the table, forced myself to look at the plans spread across it. "She's there because of me. I should be part of getting her back. She's there because the Ndrangheta are using her as bait. Which is exactly why you're staying here where they can't get to you." Lucas's voice stayed level, controlled. "This isn't negotiable. Everything is negotiable." I planted my hands on the table, leaned forward. "I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you I'm going." Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, maybe. Or admiration. Hard to tell with Lucas. "You have no training for active operations. No experience with combat situations. You'd be a liability. Then I'll stay in the vehicle, away from the fighting. But I need to be there." My voice cracked slightly. "Please. I can't just sit here and wait while she's in danger." We stared at each other across the tactical maps. The tension from the surveillance room still hung between us, unresolved and sharp. But underneath it, I felt something else. The pull I'd been fighting since the night we met. The awareness that he'd spent 10 years of his life keeping me safe. That whatever else he'd done, protection had always been the priority. "Fine," he said finally. "But you stay in the command vehicle with Franco. You wear body armor. And if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments. No hesitation. Understood?" "Understood." The operation launched at 3 a.m. I wore a vest that weighed more than my backpack full of textbooks, sat in a vehicle that smelled like metal and tension. Franco monitored 6 screens showing feeds from cameras his people had planted around the hotel. Lucas's voice came through the comm system, calm and commanding as he positioned his teams. I watched it all unfold like a movie. Men moving through shadows, weapons raised, communicating through hand signals I couldn't interpret. Professional. Deadly. This was what Lucas did. Who he was beneath the expensive suits and controlled exterior. "Contact," someone said over the comms. Then gunfire. Bright flashes on the screens, muzzle fire illuminating the hotel's back entrance. "They were waiting," Franco muttered, typing rapidly on a laptop. "Knew we'd come." More gunfire. I saw Lucas on one of the screens, moving with fluid precision, weapon up. Saw him take down 2 men before disappearing around a corner. My heart hammered against my ribs, fear and adrenaline making my hands shake. "Package located." Lucas's voice crackled through the speakers. "3rd floor, room 342. moving to extract. The next 3 minutes felt like hours. I watched screens, listened to terse communications, tried not to imagine everything that could go wrong. Then I saw her. Megan, zip-tied to a chair, Franco's team cutting her free, lifting her toward the exit. Exfil route compromised, someone reported. Heavy resistance on the south side. Redirect through the parking garage, Lucas ordered. We'll cover your... Explosion. One of the screens went dark. Static filled the comm system. Franco cursed, switching frequencies, trying to re-establish contact. Lucas? I couldn't help it. His name escaped before I could stop it. I'm fine. His voice came back, strained now. Took a hit, but I'm mobile. Getting to the garage now. The command vehicle's door opened. 2 of Lucas's men, supporting Megan between them. She was crying. Shaking. Alive. They pushed her into the vehicle and I grabbed her, pulled her close while she sobbed against my shoulder. You're okay, I whispered, over and over. You're safe now. Lucas appeared in the doorway 30 seconds later, and I saw the blood immediately. Dark stains spreading across his left shoulder, soaking through his tactical vest. He moved like it didn't hurt, giving orders, checking on Megan, coordinating the retreat. But I saw the tightness around his eyes, the careful way he held his arm. You're shot. It's a graze. He didn't look at me. Focused on Franco. Status? Everyone's out. No casualties on our side. 3 confirmed down from theirs. Franco gestured at Lucas's shoulder. You need medical attention. Later. Get us out of here first. The drive back took forever. Megan clung to me, traumatized and terrified. Lucas sat across from us, one hand pressed to his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. He never complained. Never showed pain beyond that tightness around his eyes. When we finally reached the property, medics were waiting. They tried to take Lucas to a treatment room, but he refused until Megan was sedated and settled. Even bleeding and exhausted, his priority was everyone else's safety before his own. She'll sleep for 8 hours, the doctor said, preparing a syringe. When she wakes, she'll need trauma counseling. But physically, she's unharmed. I sat with Megan until she went under, stroking her hair like we were kids again. When her breathing finally evened out, I left her with one of Franco's men and went looking for Lucas. I found him in the medical room, shirt off, sitting on an examination table while the doctor worked on his shoulder. The wound was a deep furrow, not quite through and through, but close. Blood had stopped flowing, but the surrounding skin was angry and swollen. No anesthetic, Lucas was saying when I walked in. Just clean it and suture. Sir, I really think... Do it. The doctor sighed, began irrigating the wound. Lucas's jaw clenched, but he didn't make a sound. I moved to his side without thinking, reached for his right hand. His fingers closed around mine immediately, grip tight, but not painful. The doctor worked in silence. Lucas stared at the opposite wall, breathing controlled despite the pain. I watched his face, saw the discipline it took to stay still, to not react to having tissue cleaned and stitched without numbing. You're insane, I said quietly. Need to stay alert. Can't do that if I'm drugged. His eyes finally shifted to mine. You did well tonight. Stayed calm. Followed orders. Megan's alive because of you. Megan's alive because you had the courage to demand we act fast. He winced slightly as the doctor began suturing. Most people would have waited, trusted us to handle it. You knew time was critical. The stone that had been sitting in my chest since the surveillance room began to crack, not dissolving, but shifting, making room for something more complicated than anger. Lucas had taken a bullet tonight, had put himself in danger, had bled to protect my best friend, because I'd asked him to. The doctor finished, bandaged the shoulder, left us alone with instructions about keeping the wound clean. Lucas pulled on a clean shirt with careful movements, favoring his injured side. Thank you, I said into the quiet, for getting her out, for keeping her safe. You don't need to thank me for doing my job. It's more than your job. I moved closer, close enough to see the exhaustion in his face, the pain he was suppressing. You almost died tonight. I've been almost dying for 28 years. Occupational hazard. He attempted a smile that didn't quite work. Besides, I made a promise. To your father, to my grandfather, to myself. Keeping you safe means keeping the people you love safe, too. The anger from the surveillance room was still there. The violation of my privacy, the years of watching, all of that remained unresolved. But underneath it, I felt something else breaking through. Gratitude, fear of losing him, something warmer and more dangerous that I didn't want to name. I'm still angry about the surveillance, I said honestly. About being watched my entire life without consent. I know, but tonight, seeing you get shot, watching you risk everything for Megan, I stopped, struggled for words. I don't know how to reconcile those things. The violation and the protection, the anger and the gratitude. Lucas reached out with his good hand, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The touch was gentle, tentative, asking permission without words. You don't have to reconcile them yet. Both can be true at the same time. We were too close. I could see the flecks of lighter brown in his eyes, could smell the antiseptic from his wound mixed with something uniquely him. The pull I'd been fighting intensified, made stronger by adrenaline and fear and relief that he was alive. Lucas, he kissed me. Or maybe I kissed him. Hard to tell who closed the final distance. His mouth was warm against mine, tasting like copper and exhaustion. His good hand slid into my hair, while mine found his chest, careful to avoid his injured shoulder. The kiss deepened. 16 years of watching, and 10 years of protecting, collapsing into this single moment. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. I've been in love with you for 10 years, he said quietly. Watching you grow up, seeing the woman you became. I know that's wrong. I know the surveillance makes it worse. But it's the truth. This is complicated. Everything about this is complicated. His thumb traced my jawline. But complicated doesn't mean wrong. I kissed him again, softer this time, answering without words, because I didn't know how to explain that I was falling for the man who'd violated my privacy to keep me alive. That anger and attraction could exist in the same space. That sometimes protection looked like control, until the moment it saved your life. Tomorrow we'd have to deal with the Ndrangheta, with threats and danger, and all the complications neither of us could fix tonight. But right now, in this medical room with his blood still staining the floor, I let myself have this. The warmth of his touch, the certainty of his protection, the dangerous pull between us that I'd finally stopped fighting. The 3 weeks that followed Megan's rescue changed everything. Not all at once, not with dramatic declarations, but in small moments that accumulated like snow building into an avalanche. Megan recovered in a guest room down the hall from mine. The first few days were rough. Nightmares woke her screaming. She'd flinch at sudden noises, refuse to be alone in a room. I sat with her during the worst of it, holding her hand while she cried, listening when she needed to talk, staying silent when words felt inadequate. On day 4, when the sedatives wore off and her mind cleared, I told her everything, the whole truth, my father's involvement with the Bellini family, the 16 years of surveillance, Lucas's promise, the Ndrangheta's plan to use my inheritance as leverage, all of it. She listened without interrupting, processing information that would have broken most people. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. So, you're telling me, she finally said, voice hoarse from disuse, that we've been living under Mafia protection our entire friendship and I never noticed? Basically, yes. And those cops who extracted me weren't actually cops. They work for Lucas, the Bellini organization. She absorbed that, fingers twisting in the bedsheet. My family. Are they safe? Lucas has people watching them, discreetly. Your parents think it's neighborhood watch, being extra vigilant after recent crime reports. I watched her face for signs of panic. They're completely safe. Okay. She nodded slowly. Okay, that's good. You're handling this remarkably well. I was kidnapped by Italian mobsters, rescued by different Italian mobsters, and now I'm recovering in a fortress guarded by yet more Italian mobsters. A hysterical laugh escaped her. I think my capacity for shock is maxed out. We sat together until she fell asleep naturally, without drugs. Progress. The training intensified after that. Lucas took me to the basement gym every morning at 6, running me through scenarios until my muscles screamed and my brain felt like mush. But this wasn't the basic self-defense from before. This was serious preparation for survival. If you're being followed, you need to recognize it before they make a move. Lucas walked me through a mock-up of downtown Chicago they'd constructed in one of the property's warehouses. Storefronts, street corners, complete with mannequins positioned as pedestrians. Same face showing up 3 times in different locations. Someone maintaining consistent distance behind you. Reflections in windows showing unexpected movement. I practiced for hours, identifying planted threats among the fake crowds, learning to use reflective surfaces as mirrors, memorizing escape routes from every location. The weapons training was harder, not physically, but mentally. Holding a gun still felt wrong, even after everything I'd witnessed. "You don't have to like it," Lucas said during one session, watching me sight down the range. "You just need to be competent if your life depends on it. I don't want to kill anyone." "Neither do I." He adjusted my stance, hands gentle on my shoulders. "But sometimes the alternative is worse." I thought about that while target practice echoed through the underground range. About my father, who'd died protecting people. About Lucas, who'd taken a bullet protecting Megan. About the gray areas between right and wrong that I'd never had to navigate before. Between training sessions, Lucas and I would talk. Real conversations, not the tense exchanges from those first weeks. He told me about growing up in this world, about the pressure of becoming Dawn at 18, about the loneliness of making decisions that affected dozens of families. "I never wanted this," he admitted one night over dinner. Just the 2 of us in the massive dining room that felt too big for intimacy. My grandfather groomed me for it, but I had other plans. Wanted to study architecture, build things instead of running criminal enterprises. "Why didn't you?" "Because when he died, the family needed leadership, and I was the only blood heir old enough to step up." He swirled wine in his glass without drinking. "So I became what they needed instead of what I wanted." "Do you regret it?" "Sometimes." His dark brown eyes found mine across the table. "But then I think about the alternative. Someone less careful taking over. Someone who wouldn't have honored promises to dying men. Someone who might have used you instead of protecting you." I told him about my dreams too. The languages I wanted to learn. The books I wanted to translate. The ordinary life I'd imagined before all of this. He listened like it mattered. Like my small aspirations held weight against his world of violence and power. Franco became an unexpected ally. He'd bring me more stories about my father during afternoon meetings, where we reviewed evidence. "Thomas was brilliant with patterns," Franco said, showing me complex financial flowcharts my father had created. Could spot inconsistencies in accounts that no one else noticed. That's how he discovered the Ndrangheta had infiltrated our Chicago operations 6 months before they struck. He knew they were coming. He suspected. Spent weeks trying to prove it, trying to find the leak. Franco's expression darkened. Found it too late. The ambush happened before he could expose who'd sold us out. That's when the investigation really began. Lucas, Franco, and I spent hours reviewing old files, cross-referencing names, tracking money movements that dated back 16 years. Someone in the Bellini organization had worked with the Ndrangheta back then. Someone who might still be feeding them information now. "Here," Franco pointed to a transfer flagged in my father's notes. "Payment to a Chicago PD lieutenant. Names redacted, but the badge numbers still visible." Lucas made a call. 20 minutes later, we had a name. Lieutenant James Sullivan, retired 5 years ago. One more call confirmed what we suspected. Sullivan had accessed sealed files about my father's death 3 months ago, right before the Ndrangheta started planning my kidnapping. "He's our leak," I said, staring at Sullivan's photo on the monitor. Ordinary-looking man in his 60s. Could have been anyone's grandfather. "Was our leak," Lucas corrected. "Franco, find him. I want to know who he's been talking to and where Alessandro Greco is operating from." Alessandro Greco. The name had come up repeatedly in our investigation. Leader of the Ndrangheta's U.S. operations, 42 years old, ruthless and strategic. The man who wanted my inheritance. The man who'd ordered Megan's kidnapping. When we find him, Lucas said, studying Greco's file, this ends. Without leadership, the Ndrangheta's Chicago cell collapses. You'll be safe. Safe. The word felt foreign. Will I ever actually be safe? Or will there always be another threat? Another organization wanting to use me? Lucas reached across the table, laced his fingers through mine. I can't promise you'll never face danger again. This world doesn't work that way. But I can promise I'll do everything in my power to eliminate current threats and prevent new ones. His thumb traced circles on my palm. The touch was familiar now, comforting. Somewhere between the surveillance room confrontation and Megan's rescue, my anger had transformed into something more complicated. Understanding, maybe, or acceptance that protection and violation could coexist in the same actions. I'm falling in love with you, I said quietly. I don't know if that's Stockholm Syndrome, or trauma bonding, or just genuine feeling. But it's happening. I told you I've been in love with you for 10 years. He pulled me closer, across the table, until our faces were inches apart. Whatever label you want to put on what we have. It's real, and I'm not letting you go. We kissed across the evidence of my father's murder, and the plans to avenge it. Strange place for romance. But nothing about this was conventional. Megan walked in on us 3 days later, found us tangled on the library couch, and just sighed. I'm not even surprised anymore, she said, dropping into a chair. You two have been circling each other like magnets since the night this started. Is this weird for you? I asked, straightening my shirt. Your boyfriend runs a crime syndicate and you're the daughter of a dead accountant who worked for said syndicate. She considered. Yeah, it's weird. But after being kidnapped and rescued, my threshold for weird has significantly expanded. Lucas excused himself to take a call, leaving us alone. Megan studied me with the sharp focus I'd seen her use when analyzing complex legal theories for her pre-law classes. Are you happy? She asked bluntly. I don't know. Happy feels too simple for what this is. Okay. Different question. Do you feel safe with him? I thought about Lucas taking a bullet for her. About him training me to protect myself. About the careful way he touched me, always asking permission through gesture even when words failed. Yes, I feel safe. Then that's what matters. She stood, moved to sit beside me on the couch. We're going to get through this, hon. We're going to survive whatever comes next, and go back to our normal lives. I don't think my life will ever be normal again. Maybe not, but we'll figure out a new normal. Together. That night, Lucas found me on the balcony overlooking the dark forest. Stars scattered across the sky, visible without Chicago's light pollution. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder. Franco located Sullivan. He said quietly. He's been feeding information to Alessandro Greco for 6 months. Meeting locations, financial details, everything he could access about you. Where is he now? Being questioned. By the time we're done, we'll know exactly where Greco is operating from and how to reach him. I leaned back against Lucas's chest, felt his heartbeat steady against my spine. This is really going to end soon, isn't it? Yes. One way or another. It ends soon. I didn't ask what would happen after. Whether I'd return to school, whether Lucas and I would try to make this work in the real world. Those were questions for after survival. For now, I just stood in his arms, watching stars that had witnessed 16 years of secrets, and tried to prepare for whatever came next. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old paper. Expensive, in the way everything connected to my father seemed to be expensive. I sat in a chair that probably cost more than my monthly rent, watching a man in a charcoal suit read through documents that would change my life. The trust established by Thomas Mitchell becomes active upon your 20th birthday, the lawyer explained, sliding papers across the mahogany desk. However, given recent circumstances and threats to your safety, the trustees have agreed to early disclosure. Lucas sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. Franco stood by the door, arms crossed, watching the lawyer like he might suddenly produce a weapon instead of legal documents. $3.2 million. The number hung in the air, impossible and real at the same time. Held in accounts across 3 banks, all completely legitimate. Your father was meticulous about keeping this money clean. I stared at the numbers on the page. 6 zeros. A fortune built over 16 years by a man who died protecting a 12-year-old boy and never got to see his daughter grow up. There's also property, the lawyer continued, pulling up another file. A villa in Tuscany, purchased 8 years ago, and shares in several businesses here in Chicago. All told, including the cash and assets, you're looking at closer to $4 million. $4 million. My father, the criminal accountant, had left me wealthy beyond anything I'd imagined. The Ndrangheta knows about this, I said, not really a question. They know enough. Lucas's voice was tight, which is why we need to end this before your actual birthday in 2 months. The meeting lasted another hour. Signatures, account transfers, legal proceedings that made my head spin. By the time we left, I was officially rich and still terrified. The ride back to the property was quiet. I watched trees blur past the SUV's windows, trying to process what wealth meant in a world where people wanted to kidnap me for it. Your father earned every cent legitimately, Franco said from the front seat, like he could read my thoughts. Forensic accounting pays well. He invested smart, lived modestly, saved everything for you. He should have been here to give it to me himself. He should have. Lucas's hand found mine in the darkness. But he made sure you'd be taken care of, even from beyond the grave. 3 days after the inheritance revelation, Franco burst into the dining room during breakfast with news that made my coffee go cold. We have a problem. 2 of our lower-level guys accepted bribes from the Ndrangheta. He tossed photos on the table. 2 men I vaguely recognized from the property's security detail. They've been feeding information for 3 weeks. Lucas's expression went deadly calm. What did they compromise? Property locations, security rotations, vehicle schedules. Nothing critical yet, but they were building toward something bigger. Where are they now? Secured, being questioned. Franco's jaw tightened. But if 2 flipped, there could be more. That's when everything changed. Lucas implemented what he called a total lockdown. Only the inner circle, people he'd known for years, were allowed access to the property. Everyone else was reassigned, relocated, or put under surveillance themselves. The fortress became even more isolated. I felt the walls closing in again. The brief freedom I'd found in the previous weeks, the sense that maybe I could navigate this world, evaporated under the weight of new restrictions. I can't live like this, I told Lucas on the 4th day of lockdown. We were in his office, alone, the space between us charged with frustration. Trapped in this house, unable to move, unable to breathe. It's temporary, until we identify all the leaks. Everything is temporary with you. Temporary lockdown, temporary protection. When does temporary become permanent imprisonment? His expression hardened. You think I want this? You think I enjoy keeping you caged? I think you're so focused on protection that you've forgotten I'm a person with agency. I'm not a possession to be guarded. We stared at each other across the desk. Years of complicated history compressed into this moment. Him as the protector who'd watched me grow. Me as the protected who'd never asked for surveillance or control. What do you want? He finally asked. Balance. Security that doesn't feel like suffocation. A say in decisions that affect my life. Lucas leaned back in his chair, studied me with those dark brown eyes that saw too much. You're right. I've been making unilateral decisions, treating you like something fragile instead of someone capable. So, change it. Okay. He stood, moved around the desk toward me. Here's what I can offer. You get more freedom within security parameters, more input on decisions, more trust that you can handle the truth even when it's ugly, and in exchange, you trust me when I say something is too dangerous, except that sometimes the answer has to be no for reasons beyond control. He stopped in front of me, close enough to touch. We worked together instead of me imposing and you resisting. I thought about it, about the balance between safety and autonomy, between protection and possession. Deal. We sealed it with a kiss that tasted like compromise and something deeper. 2 days later, Franco brought the intel that would end everything. Alessandro Greco will be in Chicago in 5 days. He spread surveillance photos across the war room table. A man in his 40s, silver threading through dark hair, expensive suit, cold eyes. Meeting with contacts at a warehouse in the industrial district. If we take him there, the Ndrangheta's U.S. operations collapse. Lucas leaned over the maps, already planning. Timeline? He arrives Wednesday night. Meeting is Thursday at 2 a.m. Small security detail. Maybe 6 men. He's confident, not expecting a move from us. Why not? I asked from my position at the edge of the table. Franco glanced at Lucas before answering. Because they think they've compromised us enough that we won't risk it. The 2 men we caught were part of a larger strategy to make us paranoid and hesitant. But you caught them. I moved closer to the table, studied Greco's face. This was the man who'd ordered Megan's kidnapping, who wanted to use me as leverage, who'd terrorized my life for months. Which means their strategy failed. Exactly. Lucas pulled up building schematics on a tablet. We hit them Thursday. Fast, surgical, minimal collateral. Capture Greco alive if possible. Eliminate him if necessary. They planned for hours. Entry points, extraction routes, contingencies for every scenario. I watched and listened, learning the language of violence that had been my father's world too. I want to be part of this, I said during a lull in planning. Lucas didn't immediately refuse, which was progress. In what capacity? Bait, controlled bait. The idea had been forming since Franco first mentioned Greco's presence. They want me. Use that. Draw attention while your team positions for the real strike. Absolutely not. Listen to the full plan before you say no. I leaned over the table, forced him to meet my eyes. I appear in a public location they're watching. Make them think I've escaped your protection or gotten careless. They scramble to respond, which pulls resources and attention. Your team moves on Greco while he's distracted. Franco considered it. It could work, if executed correctly. It's too dangerous, Lucas said flatly. Everything is dangerous. This just gives me agency in the danger. I held his gaze. You said you'd trust me to handle things. This is me asking you to follow through on that promise. We argued for another 20 minutes. Lucas listing every way it could go wrong. Me countering with every advantage it provided. Finally, he compromised. You can be bait, but heavily protected. Surveillance from 6 angles, armed escort hidden in the crowd, extraction team on standby. His voice went hard. And if anything deviates from plan, you abort immediately. Agreed. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed thinking about my father, about the mother who'd abandoned me, about the strange path that had led me here. Preparing to help take down a crime lord to secure my own safety felt surreal and inevitable at once. I found myself thinking about Sarah Mitchell, the woman who'd given birth to me, and then walked away when the violence of this world became too real. For years I'd carried anger about that abandonment. But lying there in the darkness, I felt it shift into something else. Understanding, maybe. Or just acceptance that not everyone could survive in this world. That choosing to leave rather than staying and breaking was its own kind of strength. I forgave her, silently, for not being able to be what I'd needed. Lucas found me on the balcony at 2 a.m., wrapped in a blanket against the November cold. Can't sleep? He moved beside me, offered his own warmth, thinking about what happens after. If we survive this, if Greco is neutralized, what comes next for us? What do you want to come next? I turned to face him. Studied the face I'd come to know so well. I want to finish school. Want to live something resembling a normal life. But I also want you in it. Somehow, we figure out how to make this work. It won't be easy. Nothing about this has been easy. I leaned into him. Felt his arms wrap around me. But I'm done pretending I don't want this. Want you. After Thursday, when Greco is handled, we'll figure out the rest. He pressed a kiss to my hair. Together. 5 days until the operation. 5 days until my life changed again, hopefully for the last time. I stood in Lucas's arms under stars that had witnessed 16 years of secrets, and prepared myself for whatever violence came next. This time, I wouldn't be passive. This time, I'd be part of ending the threat, instead of just surviving it. The operation began at 10 p.m. on a Wednesday. I walked into a coffee shop 3 blocks from my old apartment, deliberately choosing a location the Ndrangheta had under surveillance. My hair was down, no disguise. wearing jeans and the same green jacket I'd worn the night Lucas's men first surrounded my building. I wanted to look careless. Vulnerable. Franco's voice crackled through the earpiece hidden under my hair. 6 cameras on you. 3 street positions confirmed. They're watching. I ordered coffee I wouldn't drink. Sat at a table near the window. Pulled out my phone like I had all the time in the world. Every instinct screamed at me to run. Instead, I scrolled through old messages, the picture of ordinary. Lucas was somewhere in the industrial district, positioning teams around the warehouse where Alessandro Greco would be in 4 hours. This was the gamble. Draw 'Ndrangheta attention to me. Force them to scramble resources. Create an opening. Movement, Franco reported. 2 men approaching from the south. Armed, trying to look casual. They're making the grab. My heart hammered, but I kept scrolling. Kept breathing steady. Training kicked in. Awareness without obvious attention. The 2 men entered the shop, split to flank my position. Professional, experienced. On my signal, exit through the back, Franco instructed. 3, 2, 1, go. I stood, moved toward the restrooms like I'd been planning it all along. Behind me, chairs scraped. Footsteps quickened. I pushed through the back door into an alley where 2 of Lucas's men waited. The 'Ndrangheta operatives followed, found themselves facing weapons instead of a helpless target. Down. Now. The takedown was fast, brutal, effective. Zip ties, gags, extraction into a waiting van within 90 seconds. Package secured, Franco said into his comm. Moving to secondary location. The interrogation happened in a basement I didn't recognize. I watched through one-way glass as Franco questioned the captured men. They held out for maybe 20 minutes before breaking. Greco's location confirmed. Warehouse in the industrial district. 6-man security detail. Meeting set for 2 a.m. Lucas's voice came through my phone. Good work. Now get somewhere safe and stay there. Where's safe? The property. Franco will take you back. 3 hours later, I was pacing the safe house living room while Megan watched from the couch. She'd recovered enough to be clear-headed, though she still flinched at sudden sounds. You should be relieved, she said. The operation is happening. Lucas has everything under control. That's what worries me. What if something goes wrong? Then there's nothing you can do about it from here. She was right, which made it worse. I was useless, waiting while Lucas and his people risked their lives to end a threat that existed because of me. At 1:47 a.m., my phone rang. Franco's number. We have a problem. His voice was tight. The traitor wasn't one of the 2 we caught. There's another one. He just leaked your location to the 'Ndrangheta. Ice flooded my veins. What? Alessandro Greco isn't at the warehouse. Lucas is hitting a decoy. The real Greco is heading to you right now with his full security detail. How long do we have? Maybe 20 minutes. I'm 15 minutes out with backup. You need to secure the house and get to the panic room. I grabbed Megan, pulled her off the couch. We need to move. Now. The panic room was in the basement. Reinforced walls, separate ventilation, enough supplies to last a week. We were halfway down the stairs when I heard glass breaking. Multiple entry points. They were already here. Go! I shoved Megan toward the panic room door. Lock it behind you. Don't open it for anyone except Franco or Lucas. What about you? I'm buying time. I pulled the gun from the safe by the stairs, the weapon Lucas had insisted I carry. My hands shook, but I clicked off the safety, chambered around like he'd taught me. The basement door burst open. 3 men in tactical gear, weapons up, scanning for targets. I fired twice, missed both times but made them dive for cover. Gave Megan 10 seconds to seal herself in the panic room. Footsteps above, more breaking glass. They were everywhere. Franco crashed through the back entrance, weapon firing before he fully cleared the doorway. 2 of the men in the basement went down. The 3rd returned fire, catching Franco in the chest. Body armor stopped the round, but the impact threw him backward. I fired again, this time hitting the shooter in the shoulder. He dropped, cursing. Franco was up, moving despite the hit, clearing the basement with practiced efficiency. How many? I asked, voice surprisingly steady. At least 6 more upstairs. Greco's here personally. Franco checked his weapon, reloaded. This is bad, Hannah. Really bad. More gunfire from above. Then a different sound. Lucas's voice, shouting orders. He'd abandoned the warehouse operation. Realized the trap. Come back. The next 5 minutes were chaos. Gunfire echoing through walls. Shouting in English and Italian. Bodies hitting floors. I stayed by the panic room door, gun raised, protecting Megan even though she was already safe behind reinforced steel. Then Lucas appeared at the top of the basement stairs, blood soaking his shirt, face grim. Behind him, a man I recognized from surveillance photos. Alessandro Greco, 42, silver-threaded hair, cold eyes that had ordered my kidnapping, Megan's torture, my father's death 16 years ago. They fought hand to hand, brutal and efficient. Lucas landed punches that would have dropped normal men. Greco kept coming, knife appearing from nowhere, slashing at Lucas's already injured side. I saw the moment Lucas's strength failed, saw Greco's knife rising for a killing blow. I didn't think, just raised my weapon and fired. The first shot missed. The second caught Greco in the thigh. He stumbled, turned toward me with fury in his eyes. Lucas used the distraction, grabbed Greco from behind, twisted hard. The sound of breaking bone was sickening. Greco dropped, gasping, and Lucas finished it with brutal efficiency. Then he collapsed, blood pooling beneath him too fast. "Franco!" I was screaming, dropping beside Lucas, hands pressing against the wound in his abdomen. "Franco, he's bleeding out!" Franco was on his phone, calling for medical evac, barking coordinates. Lucas's eyes found mine, consciousness fading. "You're okay," he managed. "That's what matters. Stay with me, please stay with me." Movement at the stairs. Another man, one I vaguely recognized from the property's security detail. The traitor Franco had mentioned. Weapon raised, aimed at Lucas's head. I saw it happening like slow motion. Saw his finger tightening on the trigger. Threw myself between them without thinking. The bullet hit my left shoulder, spun me sideways. Pain exploded white-hot through my entire body. I heard Franco shouting, heard gunfire, heard someone screaming that might have been me. Then Lucas's hands were on me, despite his own injuries, pulling me close. "No, no, no. Hannah, stay awake, look at me." I tried. The ceiling swam above me. Franco appeared, pressing something against my shoulder. The pain intensified until darkness pulled at the edges of my vision. Sirens. Helicopter rotors. Voices shouting medical jargon I didn't understand. Lucas's face above mine, tears cutting tracks through blood and dirt. "You saved me," he was saying. "You saved my life. Promised." I managed. Together. The helicopter ride blurred. Pain medication flooding my system. Paramedics working on both me and Lucas. Franco's voice giving updates, coordinating with hospitals, with lawyers, with people who would clean up the aftermath. We were separated at the hospital. Lucas to emergency surgery for the abdominal wound. Me to a different operating room for the shoulder. Federal agents appeared before they put me under, asking questions I couldn't focus on. "Protected witness," Franco was saying to them. "She's cooperating fully. Give her space. The organization that threatened her? Neutralized. Leaders dead. Structure collapsed. She's safe now. Safe." The word followed me into unconsciousness, tangling with pain and fear and the image of Lucas's blood on my hands. When I woke, Megan was there. Unharmed, crying, holding my right hand like she'd never let go. "Lucas?" My voice came out rough. "Surgery went well. He's stable. Awake, actually, demanding to see you." She smiled through tears. "Franco says he threatened 3 nurses and a doctor trying to get out of bed." "And Franco?" "Bruised ribs, nothing critical. He's fine." She squeezed my hand. "You did it, hon. You actually did it. Greco's dead. The Ndrangheta's finished. It's over. Over. 16 years of hidden protection, weeks of terror, all culminating in violence I'd never imagined I'd be part of. And somehow, impossibly, we'd survived. They wheeled me to Lucas's room that evening, both of us bandaged and medicated but alive. He grabbed my hand the moment I was close, pulled me as near as our injuries allowed. "Don't ever do that again," he said fiercely. Don't ever put yourself between me and a bullet. You did it for Megan. That's different." "No." I touched his face. Felt stubble and warmth and life. "It's exactly the same. This is what loving someone means. Protection goes both ways." He kissed me despite the pain it caused his injured abdomen. Despite the nurses watching. Despite everything. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. "When we're healed," he said quietly, "we're going to have a very long conversation about boundaries and acceptable risk." Looking forward to it, federal agents kept us for another day, taking statements, documenting evidence, but Franco's connections held. We weren't arrested, weren't charged. Classified as witnesses who'd acted in self-defense against a criminal organization. The Ndrangheta's Chicago operations collapsed within days. Without Greco's leadership, members fled or were absorbed into other organizations. The threat that had defined my life for months simply evaporated. I'd been shot protecting the man I loved. He'd been shot trying to save me. And somehow, impossibly, we'd both survived to tell the story. 6 months changed everything in ways I hadn't expected. Not dramatically, not with grand revelations, but through the slow accumulation of ordinary moments that somehow felt extraordinary. The surgeries healed. Mine first, because shoulder wounds are simpler than abdominal trauma. Lucas spent an extra week in the hospital, then another month on restricted movement while internal stitching held. I stayed with him through all of it, learning the rhythm of his recovery, the frustration of a man built for action forced into stillness. Franco recovered fastest, his body armor having absorbed most of the impact. Within 3 weeks he was back to managing security, though he moved more carefully now, one hand occasionally pressing against his ribs when he thought no one was watching. The Ndrangheta's collapse was swift and complete. Without Alessandro Greco's leadership, their Chicago operations fragmented overnight. Some members fled back to Italy. Others were absorbed into different organizations. A few simply disappeared, probably into witness protection programs or shallow graves. The threat that had defined months of my life evaporated like morning fog. I used my inheritance the way my father would have wanted. Established the Mitchell Educational Foundation, ostensibly to help underprivileged students access college. In reality, it also served as a legitimate front for cleaning some of the Bellini family's money. Lucas approved the dual purpose, appreciating the practicality. "Your father would be proud," he said when the paperwork finalized. "Building something that helps people while serving practical needs. That was his specialty." 4 months after the shooting, I returned to the University of Chicago. My professors had been understanding about the medical leave, accepting the vague story about a family emergency that required extended recovery. I picked up my linguistics courses where I'd left off, diving back into translation theory and morphological analysis like they could anchor me to normalcy. But normal had fundamentally shifted. I couldn't walk across campus without awareness of the 2 men who followed at discreet distances. Lucas's people, still protecting, even though the immediate threat had passed. I'd learned to spot them, to recognize the patterns of professional surveillance. Some days it annoyed me. Most days I felt grateful. Megan graduated that spring and immediately joined the Foundation's legal team. She'd switched her focus from corporate law to nonprofit governance, claiming my near-death experience had given her perspective on what mattered. We worked together twice a week, reviewing applications, managing funds, building something that honored the complicated legacy of my father. "He would have hated knowing you were in danger because of him," she said one afternoon, reviewing scholarship applications in the Foundation's new office. "But he'd love seeing you use that money to help others." Lucas and I didn't hide our relationship. I moved into his place downtown, a penthouse that felt too large until we filled it with books and breakfast conversations, and the comfortable silence of 2 people learning to share space. He scaled back his direct involvement in family operations, delegating to trusted lieutenants while focusing on legitimate businesses. Not retirement, but transition. Building something that could eventually be completely legal. We had long talks about boundaries and futures, about what it meant to love someone whose past included violence, whose present still required security measures, whose future would never be entirely ordinary. "I can't promise you normal," he said one night, both of us on the balcony watching Chicago's lights stretch toward the horizon. "But I can promise you honest. No more surveillance without consent. No more unilateral decisions about your safety. I can't promise I'll always follow your security recommendations, I countered. But I can promise I'll listen. Consider them. Not act recklessly just to prove independence. We sealed the compromise with a kiss that tasted like trust earned rather than given. 6 months after we'd nearly died together, Lucas booked flights to Italy. Private because commercial travel still felt risky, but aimed at something I'd been quietly wanting since discovering my inheritance. The villa in Tuscany sat on a hillside overlooking vineyards that had been producing wine for 300 years. Stone walls, terracotta roof tiles, windows that framed the landscape like paintings. My father had purchased it 8 years before he died, probably never seeing it in person, just knowing his daughter would someday need a place to connect with her heritage. We spent 3 days there, walking through rooms filled with furniture I'd inherited from strangers, eating at restaurants where everyone spoke the melodic Italian Lucas had been teaching me. But the real destination was 40 minutes north, in a village so small it barely appeared on maps. The cemetery overlooked rolling hills that seemed to stretch forever. Old graves, some dating back centuries, marked families who'd lived and died in this soil. And there, under an oak tree that probably predated America itself, was a newer headstone. Thomas Mitchell, beloved father. 1970-2009. They'd transferred his remains from Chicago 2 years ago, Lucas explained. Brought him home to the region where his grandfather had been born, where the Mitchell name originated before immigration scattered families across the world. I knelt in grass that smelled like earth and history, placed flowers we'd bought from a vendor in the village. For a long time, I just sat there, trying to find words for everything I'd learned, everything I'd survived, everything I'd become. I wish I remembered you better, I finally said, fingers tracing his name in stone. I have fragments. Your laugh, the way you'd hum while cooking, but mostly I have the man other people described. The accountant who died protecting a 12-year-old boy. The father who built a fortune to keep his daughter safe. The wind moved through the oak tree, rustling leaves that would fall in a few months, just to regrow next spring. Cycles of death and renewal playing out in nature, the way they did in families. I understand now why you kept secrets, why you chose surveillance over presence. You wanted me to have the normal childhood you never could. I wiped tears that had started falling without permission. I forgive you for the watching. I forgive you for dying. I forgive you for all of it. I thought about my mother too, Sarah Mitchell, who'd walked away rather than staying and breaking. For years I'd carried anger about her abandonment. But sitting at my father's grave, understanding the weight of this world, I felt that anger transform into something softer. I forgive her too, I said quietly, for leaving, for choosing herself over staying in violence. Not everyone can survive in this world. That's okay. That doesn't make them bad. Lucas had been standing at a distance, giving me privacy. But when I looked up, he was there, kneeling beside me in the grass, hand finding mine. He spoke in Italian first, words I'd learned well enough to understand. A promise, updating the one his grandfather had made, the one he'd inherited at 18. Then he switched to English, voice rough with emotion. I'm not here because I owe you protection. Not anymore. I'm here because I love you, because you're the strongest person I've ever known, and I want to spend my life respecting that strength, not controlling it. More tears. Happy ones this time. I turned to face him fully, saw in his dark brown eyes the man who'd spent 10 years watching from shadows before finally stepping into light. I love you too, not despite who you are, but because of it. The protection and the violence, and the complicated honor that makes you who you are. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Not a surprise, exactly. We'd talked about marriage in abstract terms, but seeing the ring made it real and immediate and terrifying in the best way. Hannah Mitchell, will you build something new with me? Something that honors the past, but isn't defined by it? Yes. The word came out easy, certain. Yes. We stayed at my father's grave until the sun began setting, painting the Tuscan hills in shades of gold and amber. Before leaving, I pressed my hand to the headstone one last time. I'll come back, I promised. Bring your grandchildren someday. Tell them about the accountant who loved his daughter enough to die protecting strangers. Lucas and I walked back to the car hand in hand, leaving flowers and forgiveness and the weight of 16 years behind us. Italy felt like an ending and a beginning simultaneously. The past honored, the future uncertain but faced together. We flew back to Chicago 2 days later. I returned to university, to the foundation, to the ordinary rhythms of a life that would never be completely ordinary. Lucas continued transitioning the family business, building legitimate operations, while carefully disentangling from the criminal world his grandfather had built. Some nights I still dreamed about the warehouse, about bullets and blood and Francesco Greco's cold eyes, but I'd wake to Lucas beside me, real and warm and alive. We'd survived. That mattered more than the nightmares. Megan got engaged that fall. I stood as her maid of honor, watched her marry someone who'd never been kidnapped by organized crime, who'd never needed Mafia protection just to exist. The normalcy of her life felt like victory, proof that not everything had to be complicated. My 20th birthday came and went without incident. The inheritance that had caused so much violence became just money, useful for building dreams, but not worth dying over. I finished my degree in linguistics, started graduate work in translation studies, lived the life my father had wanted for me. And through all of it, Lucas was there, not watching from shadows, but present, learning to be a partner instead of a protector. Some days were harder than others. Old habits die slowly, and he'd spent a decade thinking of me as someone to guard rather than someone to know. But we worked through it, building trust one conversation at a time. 2 years after that night in the cemetery, standing on our balcony overlooking Chicago, I realized I was happy, not in spite of everything that had happened, but because of it. The violence had been real, the trauma genuine, but so was the love we'd built from impossible circumstances. "What are you thinking?" Lucas asked, arms wrapping around me from behind. "That my father would approve of this, of us. I hope so. I've spent half my life trying to honor his memory." "You did more than honor it. You gave me a life worth living." We stood there as the city sparkled below. Two people who'd survived impossibility and chosen to build something real from the wreckage. The past would always be part of us, but the future stretched out, full of ordinary moments and extraordinary love. And that felt like its own kind of redemption.